All right, the webinar should be started. We're recording. Feel free to go ahead.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to give it just 1 minute while we kind of wait to see, kind of who streams in. So we'll get started with our panel here at 5:31 on the dot. Okay. Hold on, guys, we have a little bit of. All right, that should be better. We had a little bit of an echo happening. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and jump in. So I'd first like to say welcome to our amazing panelists who are joining us tonight. We're super excited to have you both. Tonight, the focus of our conversation for this career panel is really going to be talking about women in industry, business owners, women leaders within our Tucson community, and talking a little bit more and diving into the topic of, what challenges have you faced, as a woman being in some of these roles, in industries that maybe are typically male dominated, and talk about some of the challenges that you've had to overcome. So that's really what we're going to be kind of focusing on tonight. My name is Rebecca Abel. I'm the Employer Engagement and Career Services Program Manager for Pima Community College. Also on the phone tonight, we have Adrienne Jones. And Adrienne is our Program Coordinator for Apprenticeships. She'll be kind of popping off mute and joining us here in just a little bit to ask our panelists some questions. Before we get started in all of these questions, I want to first introduce our panelists. So Joanna, if you'd like to go first, share a little bit about yourself, what you do, and anything else you'd like to share.
Hi, my name is Joanna Buglewicz. I am president and owner of Green Valley Cooling and Heating, located in Green Valley, Arizona, just south of Sahuarita, about 20 minutes south of Tucson. I am a wife to a fire captain, and we have 3 daughters.
That keeps you pretty busy, I can imagine. That's amazing. All right, and Ann, if you'd like to introduce yourself for us.
Thank you. I am Ann Vargas. I currently work for Habitat for Humanity Tucson as the Community Development Director. Before this, I worked 25 years for the City of Tucson for the HUD-funded department in community development and with a primary focus on housing. So I have a collective, probably 40 years background in policy, planning, housing, development with nonprofits and government, including the state of California. And I have 3 adult children, a wonderful daughter-in-law, and 2 amazing grandchildren.
Awesome. So you're also really busy in addition to everything else you have going on. So, my first question for both of you, and, Joanna, if you want to answer this first, and then Ann, you can hop on and answer it as well, is what made you guys choose to be in the industries that you're in, with Habitat for Humanity and also with Green Valley Heating and Cooling? What made you, make your way into that type of an industry?
So I joke about this, that I was forced, but I actually took over the family business. So I am the only child, and it was something that was introduced to me part-time when I was attending college after high school. And I did it helping around the office. I helped in the field, started learning the trade. I think my parents had ultimate goals for me to stay within the business, but about 2 years of the part-time work while attending college, I left because it wasn't as sexy of a career as what I wanted. So I ended up coming back to the family business after having a successful career in retail. However, being a store manager or regional manager just wasn't another area I wanted to stay in. So I came back to the family business, where I've been for over a decade. So I was really given kind of an opportunity, but I wasn't spoon fed. I really had to work for it.
Awesome, great. And tell us a little bit more for people that don't know what Green Valley Heating and Cooling does.
So we are a residential HVAC contractor, and we do about 95% residential, and we do about 5% light commercial work. So that would be not big box stores, but maybe like small strips, plazas, any HVAC needs, service, replacement, maintenance. We do indoor air quality. So anything that can help support clean air within the home, especially with COVID. There was a lot of opportunity for humidification and UV lights to kill germs. So really anything for comfort or safety within the home is what we do.
Awesome, that's great. And Ann, share with us a little bit about how you found your way into Habitat for Humanity.
Well, Habitat is somewhat of an extension of my underlying specialty, which is housing development and neighborhood development. I started in college with kind of general education, thinking I was going to end up teaching. I grew up in an academic family. And then I had someone challenge me to try classes in urban studies, and that combined with lots of Lego and Hot Wheels tracks and Lincoln Logs and building blocks in my childhood with two brothers, I think contributed to my desire to shape the built environment and have that intersect with quality of life in the cultural environment. So people's quality of life. Working at a nonprofit is something I did at the beginning of my career. I worked in Northern California in a 14-county service area that had been, it had been decimated by a flood. And so I learned a lot about rebuilding, rehab, and combining that with new development, everything from the financing and working with the private sector to how nonprofits are strong businesses making communities better.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So Ann, this question will be for you, and then Joanna, feel free to share your thoughts as well. But how has being a woman played a role in your career journey so far?
Well, so far is 40 years, as I mentioned earlier, and I think, just based on my age, I've seen a lot regarding how women are treated, how I was treated, and there's a big distinction, I have to say, between the state of California, which was a little more progressive for women than Arizona was when I moved back. But I have been denied opportunities. I've had to work harder for compensation. I've been told you're not going to be offered this because you're a woman. It's been assumed that I'm not as committed. I mean, all of the things that we have, heard probably in the last decade or two about women not being taken as seriously. And I think that's kind of the underlying theme, is not being taken as seriously in the work environment.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But since we're already on that topic, what is it in your personality that obviously made you push through all of that to get to the point where you're at today?
Well, a lot of what I do for work is analytical and seeing how things fit together. And I think that's true of most of the construction related jobs. We have to sequence things and we see cause and effect, and that's a skill set. And, I came from an upbringing where I wasn't allowed to have a Barbie, nothing against Barbie. I wasn't allowed to join a sorority. I mean, the messages were pretty clear. Like, there wasn't a lot of promotion for doing things that were typically female. It was like, you go out there and blaze your trail kind of upbringing.
Mhm.
So I think that was part of it. And also there, I unpacked three things. I just through observation, like the hiring process, the support for growth, and the compensation. Those are the three things that I think we all need to pay attention to, those business things, along with the environment of being taken seriously in our work.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Joanna, what do you have to add? How has being a woman kind of played a role in your career journey? Like similar to Ann, you're in an industry that is, seen as more of a male-dominated industry. So share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with what Ann said. I have also experienced, not being an owner in the company early on in my career, but then transitioning. I mean, I still had slack, and I was treated like I didn't know anything. The technical issue there is I'm not taken serious, even if I have the certification or the same licensing, or I've gone through the same education as some men, and I have experienced that before. Also, at a greater level, like a national level, any industry related organizations. I just attended a conference in Nashville a couple weeks ago where I was the only female in the room, among 50 other HVAC dealers. And so it took some time to develop thick skin, but really I think what continued to push me was my fight to make it a diverse and safe place for women, because it can be a really great career.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. We're going to unpack some of that stuff, like I said, in a few more questions. We're going to take a step back from some of the heavy stuff for a second. And I want to learn a little bit more about kind of you guys as leaders and some of the things that you do as best practices. And one of those things oftentimes is looking up to certain mentors, or, reaching out to people that you respect in the community to learn from. So Joanna, who do you look up to for inspiration or for mentorship as a woman in your career?
I am very fortunate. I found a very strong and supportive group of women who are all business owners or leaders within the Tucson community. And anytime I have an issue that arises, or, I just need feedback, it's definitely a network of women. This peer advisory group has just been instrumental in helping support me and my business along the way the last 6 years. I also sat in a organization of women in construction with Ann. Actually, that's where we met many years ago. So really, if you just call upon, other female leaders, and if you find them on LinkedIn, or, you get introduced, shoot them an email and introduce yourself. And that's a big way of how I've developed my network.
And you mentioned, reaching out on LinkedIn. What other types of avenues or areas would you recommend that students reach out to, to be able to build a network, or, explore having a mentor that they can learn from?
Well, PIMA, for instance, students can go to you and they could say, put me in touch with, somebody with expertise in this area. And, that can be a phenomenal connection. Also just doing research about, what are your interests? What are your hobbies? What are your goals? Faculty, staff, those are other resources because they have really great connections. Any sort of volunteer work, give back, nonprofits Tucson is such a small and tight knit community, just like any community would be. But there's a lot of resources I think people don't realize. But if you're in a class and it just really resonates with you, talk to the professor after class and see if they have anybody that they can put you in touch with. I mentor females, and whether they're students or I'm currently mentoring 2 students in the MBA program at the U of A, and they're in the construction trades right now, but they're in their first year MBA. And we were just partner paired alumni, and it was just one of those things that, they asked for help, that partnership. And Eller was gracious enough to offer. But, you know, take advantage of the school resources first and foremost.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I'll kind of call that out to students that are watching now or that are going to be rewatching this on demand. You know, being that you're a part of the Pima Community College, you know, everybody is so invested in the success of our students. And we're the community college. We want to be able to see you grow in the community and take on these roles as women leaders. So don't be afraid to reach out to faculty and staff and to team members that you see as someone who could be your mentor, because 99.5% chance they're going to be thrilled that you're asking for mentorship and to learn from them. And I would be shocked if you heard someone say, no, I don't have time for that. They're gonna bend over backwards for that opportunity to help you. So don't be afraid to ask. So that's really great that you called that out. Ann, what about you? Who do you look up for you know, mentorship or for inspiration?
I agree with Joanna. I mean, we all have peers. I work with the National Association of Women in Construction. There are many women who I've worked with on projects, and I thought about this and that question, like behind every completed project is a good woman. I guarantee you. I mean, I can call them out, the streetcar, you know, a bunch of downtown development, the biggest grant in the country that we got to actually pay for the streetcar. So I think the other thing I would offer up, in addition to professional associations, is that you can intern or volunteer. And with Habitat, you can come out and volunteer, and it can be a one-time thing or a repeated thing. And that's a great way to meet people and find out, you know, who to get connected with. I also belong to a group called the Incremental Development Alliance. They're, you know, who are more entrepreneurial. There's a lot of entrepreneurial groups doing construction and development in Tucson, if that's the avenue that you're interested in. And then we hire a lot of interns. So if part of your curriculum requires an internship, we are very close with Carmen Cueva at Pima Community College and the whole BCT program in regard to working directly with students with an emphasis on women in construction.
That's awesome. And I think you brought up a couple interesting points that I also want to call out for the students. One of those being joining some of these networking groups. And I know, Joanna, you also mentioned one as well. You know, there's so many groups out there that you can join and you can be a part of. And even if you're not quite ready to like make that career move, or you're feeling like, oh, I'm not quite confident enough to be a part of a group, you can just go and you can just listen, right? And you can just kind of be like a silent observer and start to kind of feel your way out and network a little bit. There's amazing groups on LinkedIn. So for students that don't already have a LinkedIn profile, you know, there's some on-demand content on our YouTube channel about creating that LinkedIn profile. Do that, because there's some really incredible LinkedIn groups for, you know, women leaders, and it's across all sorts of different industries. So take advantage of those opportunities as well. So thanks, ladies, for that. Did you guys always know that this is what you wanted to do? And like, did you always know that, you know, eventually you would end up at Habitat, or that you wanted to be in this type of an industry? Or did your career path kind of, you know, take some weird turns to get you to this point?
My career theme has been fairly seamless, although extremely broad. So, you know, I grew up in academia, and I grew up with Lego and blocks and those kinds of things. So spatial relationships and then social justice was an issue that was emphasized in my family. So what I thought, though, I didn't realize that choosing a major that was adaptable, and that's the way things connect and meeting people. Like, for example, I took real estate appraisals in college. That has served me, you know, my entire life. So it wasn't really a circuitous route. It was actually got more clear to me as time went on that this is what I'm going to do, build community.
Awesome. And Joanna, I know you talked a little bit about, it was your family business originally. When you were going to college, did you have other career paths that you wanted to explore?
Oh, I did. I was the student who I changed my major every year. It was pretty painful. I wanted to be a nurse, and then I was like, well, maybe a dental hygienist, and maybe, and then I realized I didn't like people's, strangers' mouths, and then it just became like
small detail.
Yeah, so I did follow through on business, and that just really clicked. It just really, really resonated with me, really clicked. That's another area as well that, even business schools, it sometimes it's a higher ratio of men versus women as well. So I had that experience in my undergrad career, and also when I pursued my MBA, we also had that gender structure. So, but business just really resonated with me. I liked all the complexities. The human resource side and the finance side and accounting. And, really when I came back and made the decision to come back to the business in 2010, it was like, okay, this is what I wanted to do. But I didn't look at it in terms of it's an HVAC company. I mean, it's a business. And my motivation, I'm not a money motivated person. My motivation is helping people. And I found that early on. So I partnered, the desire to help people with the business application, and just worked really, really hard to continue that. And I don't know if this is my forever career, but I think that's the beauty of, life is you can kind of mold and grow. And, if you're an expert in one thing, you can always take it and apply it to different areas.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is it's more about the skill set. It's more about like the knowledge and the abilities versus the industry when it comes to that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And I'm also hearing that it's okay to pivot and make changes. If you get into a program of study or a degree program or even a position and you realize, maybe this isn't for me, you can make that switch, because life is all about being able to kind of adapt and change paths, and that's okay. So that's really great advice for students. I know one of the best practices, that a lot of leaders in general have is, reading, right? And keeping up not only on industry trends, but, leadership and self-development and those types of things. So, what are some books that you guys would recommend students read that could really inspire them on their career path? And Ann, I'll start with you.
Okay, I might have to put mine in the chat box eventually, and I don't even know if I can hold it up, if it's legible. But I thought about this, and there's a Japanese book called Ikigai. It's Ikigai, and I will send information. And it has this really cool graphic and content that talks about what am I good at? What am I passionate about? What can I make money doing? And really, it's more of a self-assessment and of, who you are in the world. What do you feel is your sense of purpose? And as Joanna pointed out, that can change over time. But it's really honoring yourself and your strengths. So that's one thing. And then way on the other end of the spectrum, I highly recommend reading any really good book, bestseller on contract management and on budgeting. And, like I said, like real estate appraisals is something I've used my whole life, but there are things you're going to do in construction that guide almost everything you do. And Joanna named several of them that are integral to her business. But that's one. And why I say contract management is because that is the connection to your other professional relationships and how you can manage them without really being bogged down in a lot of the personal issues. And Joanna may have some opinions on this because it's one of the skill sets that's really important.
That's awesome. Thank you. And definitely put the name of that book in chat. I tried to spell it out and then I thought, oh, wait, Am I spelling it right? So I'll have Ann
Here,
put that in the chat for us.
I'll put on my glasses and put it in chat.
Perfect. And Joanna, what about you? Do you have any recommendations for books that students should read to kind of help inspire them?
Yes, and I also thought a lot about this, and two books that really stood out to me helped me really identify who I want to be as a person. And I think first and foremost, it's so just vital that you know what your values are and you know what really calls to you. And I think that might kind of resonate, the avenue you want to take in life. So the first one is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Excellent book. I've actually read it several times over the years. And the second one is called The Soul of Money, and that's by Lynn Twist. And this just gave me such a great outlook on how large and vast the world is, and that you can do anything you want. You don't have to just set your sights on one thing. I mean, you can always complete that and go on to something else. So both of those were great. They stood out to me, and they really helped kind of mold my values and my thought process, which helped, guide me in the direction I wanted to take.
Awesome. And I saw in the chat, Maritza had asked a question, and her question was, how do you know when to go for it, or if you're doing it correctly? And I think she was referring to the question that I asked previously when we were talking about, it's okay to change, programs of study, and it's okay to pivot. So how do you guys know, when it's okay to just like go for it, go for what you want, and if you're going about it correctly, or does it not matter? Just go for it and don't worry about the repercussions. What do you guys think?
So I went for my MBA. I started when did I start, Ann? I think it was 2019, because I just graduated with my MBA in May of this year. So I went back to school as, close to 40, and I was in an executive program. So my cohort was working professionals, but I've actually just, continued my education, and I'm, pursuing a PhD in higher education right now. And I think that you have an opportunity all the time to just go for it. And if it makes sense right now and it feels right, do it. And if you get done with it and you realize this isn't what I wanted to do, then you can move where you want to, but you have all that experience, within the program that you were in, or knowledge that you've attained. So you can really partner things. I know people, and I work with people who have, a degree in one thing, but they're doing something completely different. And that's just the beauty, but they're so vital to the organization or to their own organization because they're so well-rounded with knowledge.
Awesome. Ann, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to your comment about skill sets. Learning is lifelong. I think, I come from a little different perspective in that I needed a certain level of security for my children. As a single parent, it's just a different perspective. And it's, just figure out make a plan for your basic comfort, and then take all the risks that you possibly can for yourself. And also keep in mind the long game. Like, you're developing a career, and your career is many, many decades. So I wouldn't get caught up on, oh, well, this wasn't the right thing to do. Complete it as best you can and move on to something that does resonate with you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Maritza, hopefully that answered your question. If you have follow-up, you can definitely throw it in the chat, and we'll ask the panelists as we keep going. So now we're going to move back into the topic a little bit of talking about, a woman, right? A woman in industry, women leaders. And I know, Ann, you kind of touched on, some of these challenges and things that you kind of had to encounter in your career. So I want to dive into that a little bit more and talk with you about, what recommendations or what advice can you share with students who do have a challenge, because they're a woman and they're wanting to be a leader, or perhaps they're in, there's an experience where they're trying to make a decision, and maybe they're looked down upon because they're a woman, or some those types of examples. What types of advice would you share for future women leaders, for future women in industry, to overcome some of that?
I think I referenced these at the beginning, and they should be acknowledged proactively. So you have to ask yourself, what does equality look like? And again, that might be something that's evolving, but pay attention to the hiring process, whatever it is. Pay attention to the opportunity for growth, and pay attention to compensation. And those are three just sort of business principles that you need to track for yourself. So it's being vigilant is my number one piece of advice. I found that often women as multitaskers get, and not self-promoting as much as maybe some of the men have been, at least in my arena. We're just busy doing the work. Forget to be that vigilant, and it's really important. So I would do that. I would let my work speak for itself. There's a lot of challenges and obstacles that will be put in your way. Adopt integrity, adopt work ethic, demonstrate that every single day. Take breaks, because there will be times when you just can't believe how you're being treated. Hopefully not as much for you all, but know that your work doesn't define all of you, that everything that we do to add to a productive society, or that you do in your job or in your studies, is important.
Awesome. And Joanna, anything to add to that? Any advice that you would have for students that have these types of experiences that are going to happen to them?
So I completely agree with Ann. I would just say, during the interview process, do your research on the company, make sure your values align, make sure it is a safe place. Specifically for women, it's in any male dominated industry, and zero tolerance for any sort of crude behavior, and hold that as a standard, because you could be a leader helping somebody else who doesn't have the voice to say something.
Yeah. And, during the interview process, and I think this is something that everybody forgets, students, any of us, the interview process is twofold. It's for them to get to know you, but it's also your opportunity to figure out if that's the right spot for you. And so you have that opportunity to also interview them a little bit. What interview questions, Ann and Joanna, do you think that students should ask to uncover some of this and make sure that their values align? Do you have any suggestions for good questions that they could ask?
Well, my suggestion would be, if you have a personal goal in mind, then you should ask, how can I grow my career and my experience, given that I have some goals for myself professionally, and see how they respond to that. But I do want to say, there is a lot of lip service out in the working world where, yeah, we have that policy. Yeah, we adopted it. It's in our employee handbook, and yes, the policy is there, but really any questions around the practice, and not to be necessarily provocative, but you can ask, do you have like women who've advanced in your company, or how many people are here, and how diverse is your workforce? What do you think about leadership in women? I mean, if you really want to get into it, it depends on your comfort level in that particular interview.
Yeah. Joanna, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was simply just going to say, ask for demographics. I mean, you want to know what the gender ratio is, what is the diversity breakdown, and don't be don't be intimidated to ask those questions, but it's important to understand the culture of an organization.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that I'm just going to highlight for the students, you guys have both said, like, do your research, like, figure out if your values align. Another really great way for students to be able to do that, and we've talked about LinkedIn already once, but I'm going to bring it up again, is you can do some of this background research before you even go into an interview by using LinkedIn. You can pull up the company's employer, page. You can pull up the entire business profile on LinkedIn, and you can see all of the employees that they have. Type in manager, type in director, and see if any of those positions are held by women. It's going to give you a really good idea of what that demographic really looks like. So that's a really easy way to do some background research if you don't feel comfortable asking those questions just yet. It's a really great tool for you to use. So, we've talked a little bit about interviewing, we've talked about some of these different things. I know both of you guys, have your hand in hiring, and you're always, looking for talent, and you brought up internships already. Joanna, I know that we work with you a lot in a lot of different areas when it comes to hiring. What are some of the most important traits that you guys would say students should have if they wanted to come and work for your companies? What are you looking for in a student? And Ann, you can go ahead and start since you're off mute.
Oh, okay. I look for initiative. I look for, in an interview process, curiosity, self-awareness. Nobody has to be perfect. You're a student, you're getting educated, you're getting experience. Knowledge of the organization, or at least the mission of the organization. Like, you've given, as Joanna was saying, you've given some thought as to how it aligns with your career goals or your values, and some sort of openness to really, where's a good fit for you and the organization. I do check references, and I think that's important. So be ready when you go in to have your references, even if they're not required, but know who is going to stand up and speak for you, whether it's a teacher or a former employer, or a business, or somewhere where you've already established at least some credibility as a student or an individual.
Awesome. And Joanna, what about you?
So we hire on personality, because we can teach the technical aspect. We can't teach personality. So really, somebody who has good customer service skills, who's a people person and who has, drive. And, I think most people in the world are happy people and good people, and, really align with that. In addition to what Ann shared, I would say, you have the references, but also have a resume. Come with a resume and make sure your references, you do have, a previous teacher, a faculty member, somebody within your program who can share with the organization, how you were as a student, and maybe your behavior. That's a big one. We want to know that you just align with personally in attitude. And it's actually pretty surprising. Most people that we hire have no experience because they have such a fantastic personality. And if they have drive to, move forward in the industry, we can train on that whole, we have a full working lab, we can train all of that. But do your research, come prepared, and, take your time to ask questions, to answer questions. A lot of times from experience, we've had really nervous candidates, or, and it can be a very nerve-wracking thing, but, role playing is really great. And I don't know if Pima has anything like that, but it could be an opportunity. I've done some in my undergrad business, we did some role playing, but this was like a long time ago. So But it's a really great way to kind of break out of your shell. And even if you've been on interviews before, it may be, the type of organization or career you're going into, just to have that kind of experience can be beneficial.
Awesome. And you kind of hit on the, doing some interview practice, some mock interviews, getting that experience. So I will call out right now, we do have something for students. So if they don't realize it, if you're not sure, you log into your MyPima, you go to the student tab, down to student resources, there's something called Big Interview. And Big Interview is actually a really powerful platform for Pima students to use to do practice interviewing, and also just to learn how to answer some of these difficult interview questions, like, what's your biggest weakness, or tell me about yourself, the things that make us feel a little nervous and make our palms a bit sweaty. So students who are listening to this, and are rewatching it at a later point, make sure you access Big Interview in your MyPima to help prepare you. I'm also hearing from both Ann and Joanna that, it's less about the skills and it's more about the soft skills, the personality and your drive and your curiosity and your preparation when you show up for an interview. So really focus on some of those things. So great advice, guys. Thanks so much. So now I want to ask you guys, what do you think was the single biggest decision that you made in relation to your career? If you had to kind of look back through everything you've accomplished, what has been the biggest, most pivotal decision you've had to make? And Joanna, I'll start with you on this one.
I think it was going back to school and understanding students' perspective today of higher education, because it's really changed, for a lot of people. But I really want to support my team members, and I have quite a few team members who are continuing their education, whether it's through Pima or certificate program or associate's degree through HVAC. So, and with the combined working lab, like, I understand what the juggle is with like home life and family and the demands. So going back to school for me was a really great thing to understand more of my team's perspective of, working an 8-hour shift and then having to go to class for an hour and a half. And, then you get home late and you have homework, or you have, so it really resonated with me and recently, and changing the way that what we do in our learning lab, and what I can provide more of and what I can support more of. So it was a good thing.
Awesome. I'm going to actually have a follow-up question to that. And Ann, I know you kind of touched on the fact that you're also a mom. How do you guys juggle everything, with having, leadership positions in your company? Joanna, you're currently, I think you said working on your PhD now. You have children, and you have children. You referenced being a single mom in your career path. So, what advice do you have for, our students who are, are non-traditional learners, who do have children and are wondering, like, how can I do all of this? How am I going to make all of this work? I have a career goal. I have something in mind that I want to do, but I have all of these duties as a woman and mom that I also have to prioritize. So what advice would you have for those students, since you guys are both doing it and living it?
Well, I'm kind of like out of that age group, although I have a grandson who spends time with me and he's 10. But I can say, looking back, there are a few things that are really good tools. One is just time management. Like, cook on Sunday afternoon and try not to overdo it, but just give yourself blocks of time to get certain things done. Enlist your family if you can. Enlist your family. Also block out time that is just for you and your kids, so that you're not distracted, so that you aren't like mad at yourself for not being the perfect mom. Be like, all right, you guys, Sunday between 10 and 2 belongs to you. I mean, you have to be rigid, but you have to be human. You have to allow yourself to be human. The other thing that I did that was very helpful is there was another single mom, and we did a lot of stuff together with our kids, and we would reciprocate. You can do that with a neighbor. I don't know if this is helpful because I know life is so stressful, but just the same people you look for professional support, don't be afraid to be human with them and say, this is my priority right now.
And I like that you touched on, finding people that are in similar situations and being able to lean on each other and help each other out, because sometimes all it takes is having that community or that network to help, and it really helps kind of propel you forward. So that's awesome. Joanna, what about you? What advice do you have for students in these types of positions?
I would also say finding a community to help support you and your family is, it's temporary. And I think if you just keep that mindset, but as Ann said, time management, organization is huge. But I also think we as women have such a stress from the societal pressures of what a woman should be, what a wife should be, what a mother should be. And I think just recognizing that there's no such thing as perfect. And, why do we have to follow this traditional role of 1950s, there's a pie ready when you get home from work? Like, that's not realistic. And, females can be in the working world, we can be business professionals, and it takes effort and it takes grit. And but you need that community, you need the organization and time management to have a plan of attack and an end goal of the accountability end of it. But you can also find that community with resources at school as well. I found so much support through some of my cohort study groups. If you don't understand content, or everybody's in the same rut of family and they're juggling constantly. And so if you just ask, it's really helpful, because there's people that are like-minded and they're going through the same thing. And if you just talk about it, you can put together a study group or put together some sort of like accountability group to get you to that next goal.
Yep. So it sounds like finding your groups, finding your people, finding your community is what's going to really help you. So, Ann, I'll start with you on this one. What is one thing that makes you the most proud, of your career path and the barriers that you've broken through and the challenges that you've made it through? What's the thing that comes to mind that's your biggest thing that makes you the most proud?
Personally, the biggest thing that makes me proud is I supported my family. And then, professionally, I grew within my career, and there are some tangible results in the community. I can see the fruits of my work. I had a saying, family, health, and reputation, where it was like my mantra, like, and it was really important for me to maintain that. So.
Awesome. And Joanna, what about you? When you look back, like, what's the one thing that you're most proud of so far?
So I have the most amazing team. We have multi-generationals within the organization. I had my longtime office manager, her daughter-in-law works for us. We've had, children of, retired team members work for us. So I really think we've just built such a fantastic culture, which is very unique to the industry. And my team is my second family, and we get to help people every day and solve their problems, and it's exciting. And it had been in other careers prior to, and I never had that, and so building that was very important to me, a safe place for everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. So, we have about 10 minutes left in our call, and I just want to open it up to you guys to share any last thoughts that you have, any last bits of inspiration, or, anything that you want to be able to share with Pima students that are watching this tonight. And I'll go ahead and start with you. Is there any last minute comments that you'd like to share, inspiration for them?
Yeah, I think, well, there's a couple things. One is kind of practical. I was having a conversation with another women leader in the community, and we were talking about that we live our life in chapters. And so I think there's some beauty to that. and, allow yourself, I mean, your life is broken down into semesters right now. So look at the long view of your career, but understand that everything is broken down into, smaller segments. I would say, back to family health reputation. If you keep those things in mind, family or whatever that looks like for you, it might be your cat is your family, whatever, family is really important. Health is really, really important. So keep an eye on your health. And your reputation is all encompassing for all the decisions that you're making. So even if you're really frustrated, and we all get frustrated, and you need to complain, and I say this once in a while to one of my children, make sure you're complaining with a confidant and somebody who's not at the workplace. Like, find somebody who you can download to, so that you can really work through those difficulties without bringing it back to your workplace.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Joanna, what about you? Any closing comments or things that you'd like to share with students?
Yeah, I would just say, this too shall pass. This experience, whether you continue on the journey of the program you're in, or you're applying to, or you change it, like, it's okay. And defining who you are, what your values are, and what you most care about, you can really streamline and understand, where you want to go in your career. So I say good luck to everybody, and I'm always here if you ever have questions.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So Joanna and Ann, thank you for being here tonight. I know that the advice and the things that you've shared are going to be super helpful for students. This recording is going to be shared out to all of our departments and shared on our YouTube. So we'll be able to use it in courses and classes. But it's just been really, really insightful and really inspirational hearing some of these things that you guys have been sharing. So thank you for being here tonight. To our students, thank you so much for being here. Reach out to anybody here in career services if you guys ever need anything. If you have more questions for Ann or Joanna, you can email us at careerservices@pima.edu. We can get in touch with them and answer follow-up questions if there are any. But with that, I will end this tonight with big thank yous, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now.
Great. Thank you.